Hello, listeners, and welcome to In The Roud on Patreon, and welcome to the first in an ongoing series of mini-seasons called Singer's Choice. This is a chance for a singer guest to be with us for 3 whole episodes, and a chance for us to cover 3 folk songs of their choosing from anywhere in the Roud Index. I am delighted to say that for our Singer's Choice mini-season at the moment, our guest is the fabulous singer and musician Nancy Kerr. As ever with the episodes, we start with someone providing the history of the song. So, to get us going, I was joined by Irish song historian John Moulden to discuss Roud 3378, The Wee Weaver. Well, hello, John Moulden.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing grand.
Excellent stuff, excellent stuff. This is something I've almost not come across yet on the podcast, and the times I've been doing the podcast is that I've mostly used people that I already know so far. But as I go on and the songs get less and less known by people I know, I'm meeting new people. And 10 minutes ago, when we both joined this Zoom room, was our first meeting. So it's very nice to meet you.
And you?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm very glad to have you on for this. Because this is, I believe, because we're in the Patreon side of the podcast, and this is the first episode of our first Singer's Choice mini season. We've got Nancy Kerr doing picking 3 songs for this mini season, but also on the main podcast, I think listeners will correct me if I'm wrong, that this is actually the first Irish song we've actually come to on the podcast and the Patreon. So this is
That is very reprehensible.
yes, you and I had some email conversation, didn't we, when we looked up how many Irish songs there are in the first 300 Roud numbers, and I think we came to 4 or something, 4 songs.
Yeah, he started in the wrong place.
I'm sure the Scots would disagree with you. The amount of Scots songs there are in the first 100 Roud numbers is incredible. But I guess he's looking at it. Most of, I guess, about 80% of the first 100 Roud numbers are child ballads,
Yes.
and therein lies the thing. So never mind, never mind.
Yeah,
This is
and
what the Patreon is for, and the Singer Choice mini seasons is we get to cover other songs.
another skew
Indeed.
to the record.
So, the first song that Nancy chose is one we're going to look at today. Um, and this is a number I will never ever get to on the main podcast stream. This song is Roud 3378, 3378, and it's the song The Wee Weaver. So, John, tell us first off, what's the song about? What's the plot? If it has a plot, some songs don't have plots.
The best description of this song was probably given by Ewan MacColl in one of the episodes of the Song Carriers when he described it. But briefly, it has pretty well minimal narrative. It's simply tells the story of presumably a young man identifying himself as a weaver, saying that he is confined to his loom, and then saying that he's in love, and that this girl also looks at other men, and this is not very nice for him. But that's as far as the story goes. The rest of it is about a loving walk by a riverside in which they simply walk and talk and have a pleasant time without any particular thing happening at all. And then, again on the riverside, the man, Willie, asks Mary, will she be his bride? And she consents, they're married, and they live in contentment thereafter with pleasure and treasure on Loch Erin's shore. And there are a couple of things, though, in the actual wording which I would particularly strongly point out. That is,
Right, yeah.
the first line is, I am a wee weaver confined to my loom. And it's a reminder that in the days when weaving was predominantly a cottage industry, when a third room was added to a two-room house to accommodate a loom, seldom with very much light, and the amount of work which a weaver had to do in order to earn a decent amount of money meant that he was virtually confined to his loom, not merely for the hours of daylight, but perhaps beyond them if the family could afford candles, and most families couldn't. The cost of night working was too great to allow it.
Right,
The
wow.
other
So,
thing which I would point out is that in the oldest version, the first known version of this song, there is a clear location, Loch Erin, as it sounds, but actually Loch Erne in County Fermanagh.
right, okay.
And of course, clear location is one of the marks of traditional song. The thing which happens when a song moves far beyond its original location is that it becomes dislocated, and this may be reflected in some of the modern versions, which tend to wipe out the Loch Erin shore, because for the audience which is intended, the location is no longer relevant.
Yeah, and also in the song, nobody dies, which is a nice treat.
Well, it's certainly an absolutely idyllic love song.
Yeah,
It okay, it sets up some tension at the beginning in that he's worried because she is in many young men are in love with her, and he's worried about his position in her affections. But the other two verses completely resolve this, and they are in fact pretty well idyllic. I think that uh, when Sandra and Nancy Kerr sang it, they
oh yeah.
commented that it was a rarity, a happy love song, and that's so. Yes.
Yeah, you tend to get sort of a doomed romance a lot more rather than happy romance. But there we go. It's nice that these things exist. So, was this song particularly sort of popular and widespread, or was it just sort of found in one place? Or
This is the odd thing that, in fact, it has a single point origin, certainly as far as the tune and text are concerned, in the mouth of Bridget Tunney, Paddy Tunney's mother, and he sang it after her, slightly differently.
right, okay, because of course, because I'm most familiar with Paddy Tunney's singing of it.
Yes.
Yeah,
But there was another rendering of the tune from Johnny Docherty, Johnny Simey Docherty of Glenfin, well, actually, an itinerant tinsmith fiddler in Donegal. And he, on a BBC recording, if I remember rightly, uh, Johnny Doherty, BBC Recorded Programmes Library 19586. And he sang the tune over and then he played it on the fiddle, mainly much the same as Bridget Tunney sang it, but obviously allowing for the differences between voice and fiddle style and the differing imaginations of the two players, of the singer and the player. Uh, then very, very much the same. The interesting and intriguing thing about it is that it has so taken people's imagination, perhaps as a result of its being shown, or rather being played in that Song Carriers broadcast by Ewan MacColl, uh, that fair numbers of singers, Steeleye Span, among others,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
Hannah James and Sam Sweeney, all listed, by the way, on the mainly Norfolk website, which
We
I
love mainly Norfolk. It's
which
it's
I
a fantastic font of
recommend for
information.
excursions into revival singing, but perhaps not necessarily for what I regard as the real thing, which is the people who sang in the countryside for their friends and neighbors.
Yeah, mainly Norfolk does have it does list quite a lot of the traditional recordings, but I think more focused on the revival. But
Yes,
yeah.
that's so. But
So
it's
so we can basically take this back to Bridget Tunney,
pretty
and
well,
and that's
although
as far.
I have never seen any scrap like this. And I've seen most of the songs in oral tradition in Ireland, and I've seen most of the ballad sheets or small songbooks printed in Ireland. And I have
Right.
not seen these verses in another song, though I would suspect that it's a fragment, a beautifully truncated fragment out of a longer narrative. There's more of a story, but during the course of the story, this central element, this central love episode, and then successful marriage were dwelt upon, and the rest, perhaps the unnecessary narrative, has been forgotten as things are. But as it is, this cut down narrative has provided us with an absolutely exquisite piece of, well, actual idyllic experience.
Yeah. So so is there no information whatsoever about where Bridget might have got it from or where it's come from before that?
Nothing. The BBC's recording of her has no speech, and the song, as the BBC noted it in their index, has absolutely no background. Neither Peter Kennedy, nor Seamus Ennis, nor Sean O'Boyle, who were doing the collecting and, when they had the chance, orienting the songs within their knowledge of the overall Irish or overall tradition, nobody had any comment about it.
That's extraordinary. Uh, at the time of recording this with you, yesterday I recorded for the main podcast, Brian Peters doing the history of Route 14, The Demon Lover. And I finished editing that this morning, and it came to 1 hour 15. So there's so much to say about the history of that song and where it came from, all the things. And this one is the sort of extreme opposite, in that yeah, there's no sort of history of it really.
Yes, but there is history within it if you begin
I-
to inquire,
Indeed.
because the the weaving and the location will provide
Yeah.
quite a bit of a story.
Well, let's get on to that then. Let's get straight into that.
Linen weaving,
Okay.
the climate in the north of Ireland, it being wet, it needed a great deal of rain to grow flax. Secondly, the flax, once grown, in order to separate the fibers, needed to be wetted. That is, it needed to be immersed in a dam. The term which is used in Ireland is retted. And I can tell you that as the rotting, which is retted, as the rotting proceeded, the stench from those lint dams, as they were called, linen, lint, uh, was prodigious. In fact, once upon a time, I heard it said that a perfect description of the Londonderry air. You presumably know the tune, the Londonderry air, the tune of Danny Boy. Well,
That's right. Yeah.
the Londonderry air, as far as one person was concerned, was flax retting at twilight. In other words, the smell coming across the air of flax retting, which was quite something and took you by the nose very much, so that you were as anxious to get out of it as you would out of a slurry field. But after the retting, the flax was taken and was broken on a wheel in a scotching mill. And there, the power was probably provided by a water wheel. And of course, the water course and the amount of water and the reliability of the water then was an absolute necessity, so that it all depended, or very, very largely depended, on water. Now, in Fermanagh, there was plenty of water. In fact, you know that Lough Erne, which is mentioned in the song, is in Fermanagh. Well,
Right.
it
Yeah.
is said that for 6 months of the year, Fermanagh is in Lough Erne because it's so wet.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
And that perhaps is one of the reasons why, for a time at least, flax growing, flax treatment, and generally spinning and weaving would have been things which would have occurred in Fermanagh. At the same time, Fermanagh is about 80, 90 miles away from the main market in Belfast. So that it was a kind of a boom and bust. That the trade very, very much fluctuated. And having fluctuated, it meant that weavers, and it's kind of ironic that in this song they have pleasure and treasure on Lough Erne shore. That was, they may have had pleasure, but I do not believe that it's likely that they would have had that much treasure, because again, there were times when they could have been very poor, and actually most weavers were. About 1850, the trade completely ended. So it's possible perhaps to date this song, if it uh, if it actually originated in Fermanagh, somewhat before 1850.
Right. Yeah. Certainly, the use of the location being quite accurate to the looming train then sounds likely. I wonder if the pleasures treasures thing is more of a an artistic license with the original writing of it, the fact that they both rhyme,
Perhaps so,
an
yes.
internal rhyming thing, you know.
Yes, but it's actually quite interesting in that in other counties, in County Antrim and County Down, there were a large number of weavers who wrote poetry. Among them, one Francis Boyle, who said, "When I am weaving on my loom, I think upon my darling, though she remains in Moira town and I live in Kilwarlin. Resolved in mind for to be kind and never to deceive her, then in return her love will burn for me, her linen weaver." Wishful thinking, perhaps, because weavers pasty faced because they stayed so much time indoors, and also probably pretty exploited because this was piecework. A man would weave his day, and if he weaved carefully and the weft and warp came together to make a firm piece of cloth without any flaws, then he would be paid better than otherwise. So he would take his piece to the market once it was woven, and he took out his bit of cloth and he took it to the market and he laid it in front of a foreman or a salesman or a buyer, and the buyer tried to pick holes in it and tried to cut him right down as far as possible. And there are actually poems about this as well, in that uh, my wee bit of labour being thrown on the counter with butterflies in. To examine it he goes. He hemmed and he hawed, and he swore it was shameless. Sign out wi' a snoot cloot, that would be a handkerchief, by the way, and dated his nose. He swore that the warp would have been better by double, for their penny collars was nae use of a'. Though the price of my labour was just half a guinea, he would give me a shilling and let me awa'. That was the kind of, if you like, exploitation that potentially was with uh, the weavers in their day. Hard work, very little pay, a good deal of exploitation, and uh, just not perhaps a good life. And it's just as well that this song in itself is such a happy love song.
Well, yes. I mean, it's kind of interesting because it essentially it's working from home, but there's so much work that you can't even enjoy the home bit of working from home. Yeah.
Yes, just that. Uh, it it was miserable, actually,
Well, and as you said, good thing the rest of the song is so lovely and joyful.
but with the opposite of a silver lining.
Yes, because I think if they get married, don't they? Will you be my bride?
They
And
do.
the couple got married and they're Rome no more, but he's still going to be at home weaving 24/7.
Yes. So it could be ironic, but I think we should leave people to enjoy the song as it is.
Indeed, so. Was there any other topics to cover?
Well, the trade being in its early days a cottage industry, there are reminders of this in other songs, like, for example, The Factory Girl,
Oh yeah,
or as it is on English ballad sheets, The Fortunate Factory Girl. The factory girl who encounters a a rich man who fancies her and attempts to persuade her to marry him. And in The Fortunate Factory Girl, she accepts and goes happily away with him, despite any possibility that there might be a difference of class which would make things difficult for them. Uh, but mostly in Ireland, the girl says, "Oh, take yourself off, I'll stick to my own kind." But this particular song seems to be set in the countryside. Even the factory is set in the countryside rather than in the town, but predominantly the factory work, as it was after about 1850, moved, and with it, of course, the livelihood of anybody who depended on spinning, weaving, or anything else in the countryside. And that was when actually many people moved from the countryside into Belfast in order to continue work with which they were familiar as hand weavers or hand spinners, to continue it in factories. Uh, but no, I mean it's just trade and the way in which people had to live in the past is very difficult to describe now, unless one is a social historian.
yes, it's quite difficult to imagine what it was actually like. So we didn't actually mention this earlier. Paddy and Bridget Tunney, where were they from?
Well, they were from the boundary between Donegal and Fermanagh, close to the town of Belleek and
Right,
quite close to the River Erne, which flows from Lough Erne through Belleek and into the Atlantic at Ballyshannon.
right, okay.
Uh, but the family was always from there, although Bridget and her husband went to live in Glasgow for a time, but returned to Fermanagh when Paddy was pretty young altogether. In fact, very young. I think he was only a matter of months old when they returned to the area around Billeek.
Right.
The
Okay.
the Tunney family actually is currently reissuing their father's books. The first of them has been issued, the where the Stone Fiddle, and John Tunney, the youngest of the brothers, has done a very, very substantial work. In fact, it's a PhD thesis on singing in the three town lands around where his family came from. And during it, or within it, there is more detail of Bridget Tunney and her family, who were called Gallagher, uh, than you will find elsewhere. So the family is particularly well located, although it's now fairly well scattered. They don't live in that particular area anymore, but they had lived there for generations, whole generations and generations, maybe four or five or six.
Right. So this, yeah, this really was a sort of a sort of in quotes a local song for them in a way because they were near the area.
Yes, well, Paddy sang many songs concerning Lough Erne. Uh, "'Twas down by the banks of Lough Erne I met with a beautiful dame," or "Edwin on Lough Erne's shore." That I'm not even sure whether he sang that,
Okay.
but all sorts of things. Location in traditional songs, location is exceedingly important.
Yeah, it is, and then you get people who muddy the waters. I'm always mentioning on the podcast. Sure people are fed up with me mentioning my favorite traditional singer was a guy from Sussex called Gordon Hall, and he had lots of really long ballads and everything, but so much of the time it's pretty sort of well agreed upon that he made up a lot, a lot of the stuff he sang, or he extended songs and he to make it the most complete version. He shoehorned verses in from everywhere, and there's clearly some moments in some songs where I think he that sounds like he wrote that himself. And when it comes to locations, more often than not, it's a location in Sussex, and it's usually Horsham, and there's no other version that anyone can find that has Horsham in it. And it's generally agreed upon, quietly agreed upon, that he probably just changed all the locations to Horsham because that's where he was from,
But
or that's where
that
he lived.
but that is what happened in tradition anyway.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
as a song moves from one location, it doesn't just move from the location, it moves from one community, and consequently, to some extent, it moves from one culture to another. So that if
Yeah,
it moves and there are elements of the culture in the first place which are not well understood in the second place, then the likelihood is that there will be changes.
yeah.
One of one of the examples which I use of this is Geordie Hanna, great singer from County Tyrone,
Oh
sang
yeah,
a song called The Lisburn Lass. And he sang, "She's proper tall and quite complete, like a Wexford girl from head to feet."
right.
And the ballad sheet from which somebody in the past before him got said, "She's proper tall and quite complete, like waxwork made from head to feet." So
That's fantastic.
waxwork changes to Wexford. The verb made changes to MAID, the verb girl, like a Wexford girl.
I love that sort of thing. That
And
where
then,
where songs evolve like that. That's brilliant.
yeah,
That's
and then
wonderful.
again, a guy called John McGettigan sang a song called The Murlough Shore, which spread absolutely all over Ireland as a result of his recording. And he sang where the linen webs, talking about, again, an element of weaving. A linen web is a sheet of cloth. But
Right.
when it was sung by, I think it was Martin Reedy in Clare, he sang Where the Linnet Wades, talking about a small stream where the linnet wades. He made sense of it in his own way, according to his experience.
Of
And
course. Yeah.
I'm kind of convinced that the sort of thing which we think of as mistakes by traditional singers are not actually mistakes. They're creative elements. That is, that what happens is that with the movement of a song, sense is lost. And in changing something, the singer in the new place doesn't lose sense. He reimposes sense from his own point of view. And we have to remember, of course, that these places were not, except in very tenuous ways, in contact with one another. So a song in one place could be a song in the other place without somebody like me who knows all the versions coming along and saying, yes, that's related to that and that related to this. What's here is the song, and what's here is the song, as far as that's concerned, as far
Yes,
as
of
that one
course.
place is concerned. And I think quite often we don't think of the way in which these songs came about, diffused and changed in the way that would have been appropriate to the times when they were doing this, or to the people who were involved in it. Well, we were a lack of imagination, perhaps. We look too much from our own point of view.
So, do we reckon that might have applied to Paddy Tunney with the so many songs of his referring to Loch Erin that was
He might very well, because actually, the song which he sang as the Maid of Loch Erin Shore originated on ballad sheets as the Maid of Loch Gowna Shore,
ah
and it's virtually the same song.
well,
Uh,
there we go.
so uh, these things happened, and they happened naturally. And I would not fault Gordon Hall in the slightest. On the contrary, actually, I think I would delight in
Oh
what he
yeah.
did, because first of all, he muddied the waters for people like me, and for those who would like to have a bit of predictability in what people sing. But actually, because these songs were sung by people and sung by people in their communities who moved outside their communities, moving their songs with them and sang them in other places, and somebody else took it up, and somebody else took it up, and you have 51 points. And in the end, what actually almost applies is chaos theory, in that there are so many possible changes because we have a very incomplete record as a result of song collecting and so on. We have nothing like a complete view of what actually went on in tradition. But I think that I just think that, as I say, we are drawing conclusions from a very, very, very limited corpus. And until, fortunately, somebody like Steve Roud comes along and lists absolutely everything that can be listed, every possible oral report of a song is there, or would be if he lived for even longer than you. Uh, then the likelihood is that we will begin to see a decent patterning. We build a thick corpus of what we're looking at, and we have a chance of actually developing, if you like, a sensible theory of how traditional song evolved, diffused, and eventually landed with us.
Yeah. absolutely.
That's very nerdish, isn't it?
it's very interesting. Yes, I love it. I love it absolutely. Um, so in terms of, it's weird because normally I would say, who have you got to recommend in terms of recordings of this song sung by traditional singers? But we've mentioned it all already because there's not much to go on.
Honestly, I reckon that if you can possibly get hold of Bridget Tunney's recording, and in fact, it's quite accessible because if you search on the song carriers, Ewan MacColl, and include the word Mudcat,
Oh
you
yes,
will find a thread on the Mudcat Cafe.
Mudcat Cafe is a message forum, isn't it? That's very folk
Yes.
song based.
If you go to that thread, about the second or third entry is a link to all the texts of the broadcast that Ewan MacColl did for the song carriers and all the recordings, the whole of the set of programs. And Bridget Tunney's recording uh, of the Wee Weaver is in the 9th program, and there there it stays. Listen to it if you possibly can. It's exquisite.
Great, yeah. And then Paddy Tunney, the recording of Paddy Tunney singing it. I know it came out on a Topic album,
It's on the
uh,
20th volume of
The Voice of the People,
Voice of the People. Yeah.
which, if you're looking for it, it's labeled. The subtitle of that album is "There Is a Man Upon the Farm," Volume 20 of The Voice of the People. And it's also there on the Topic LP from 1975, the mountain streams where the moorcocks crow. That LP as well,
Yeah.
and and John Doherty as well. Do you want to mention him a bit more?
Honestly, I would go with Bridget Tunney. I
Yeah,
have a it's a it's not just a banker, it's my only bank.
that's fair. Yeah, Bridget and Paddy, and then yeah, the John Doherty is just the tune, isn't it? Played
It is,
on
although
the
he sings the air too. And he talks a bit about where he heard it first.
right. Well, I will basically I'll play some clips of those, probably just Bridget and Paddy in the mid episode bit. But yeah, I think we've come to the end. That's really fascinating. It's yeah, the weaving trade and a lot of subject matter for Irish songs is not something I'm really well up on. So it's I've found this fascinating, even if no one else has.
Well, one of the things, the well-known jug of punch, it's been pointed out that the 23rd of June is about close to St. John's Eve, which was traditionally midsummer in Ireland
Right.
and tended to be a holiday. And it was on the 23rd of June as I sat weaving on my loom,
Uh-huh.
which is an indication, of course, that the weaver couldn't afford to take the holiday.
Yeah, that's amazing. Brilliant. Okay, I think we'll draw this to a close here. That's really fascinating, and yeah, thank you so much for doing this. It's been educational.
I think you will probably need to do a great deal of editing.
We shall see. We shall see. Um, yeah, and we may have you back at some point if more Irish songs turn up in Singers' Choice mini seasons and future seasons of the main In The Roud podcast as well.
All depends whether you pick the 20 or so songs that I really know anything about.
Well, indeed, it's all about the song, so we shall see. But yeah, for the time being, anyway, John Moulden, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It allows me to pontificate a bit sometimes.
Great. Fine. Cheers. A huge thanks again to John Moulden for providing us with the history of the Wee Weaver. We're now at the halfway point in the episode, so we'll just take a minute or so to listen to a few different versions of the song sung by traditional singers. As John and I were discussing, there really aren't any other source recordings apart from the main two, so that's what you're going to hear now. The Wee Weaver sung first by Bridget Tunney and then by her son Paddy Tunney.
I am a wee weaver confined to my loom. My love, she is fair as the red rose in June. She is loved by all young men, and that does grieve me. My heart's in the bosom of lovely Mary.
I am a wee weaver confined to my loom. My love, she's as fair as the red rose in June. She is loved by all others, which does anger me. My heart's in the bosom of lovely Mary.
On to the second half of the episode. I sat down with Nancy Kerr to chat about her history with folk music and to discuss her thoughts with this week's song, The Wee Weaver. Well, hello, Nancy Kerr.
Hello there, Matthew.
You and your mum are the only people who call me Matthew, and
I know.
everyone else.
I kind of did it on purpose. I don't know why. Sorry about
No,
that.
it's fine. It's absolutely fine. It is technically my name,
Exactly, but you're not in trouble. You're not yet in
so
trouble.
no, I'm not in trouble. No, that's right. Well, welcome to In The Roud. This is not In The Roud, the main podcast, but nevertheless, in The Roud, nevertheless.
Yeah, woohoo! Thank you for having me.
And yeah, this is the first episode, as I would have stated earlier on the episode, this is the first episode on the Patreon side of the podcast, and also the first episode of your 3-episode mini-season of Singer's Choice.
Yeah, brilliant.
So I'm very honoured that you agreed to be my first Singer's Choice guest.
Well, mutual, thanks.
And yes, as I'm sure I explained earlier, the point of the Singer's Choice mini seasons is so that we can cover songs that I would never ever get to on the main podcast. Otherwise, going numerically and sequentially means that I doubt I'll ever get past 1,200 maybe out of 46,300.
I mean,
something.
it's good to have goals. I mean, when my dear James Fagan and Sam Hindley started on their, child ballad exploration, even that at the time seemed, a lot of ballads. You really had to invest in your future self. But now, you get through it. You can start to see the progress and the, just the putting down. I mean, honestly, not to make too much of a fuss of you all, but I love this endeavor, and I love this kind of the task and the kind of bringing together of something that is a sort of cataloguing and an artistic exploration. I think it's great. Big fan of it. I don't want to do it myself. Very happy to come and guest and get a little, taster of the huge Sisyphean tasks that you're all undertaking.
Quite so, yes.
Yeah.
It's something for me to keeps me off the streets, as they say.
Yeah.
It keeps me on Zoom, I think, is more the case.
Yes, that's right.
And the point is to cover songs that would never get covered on the main podcast, because there are some people were saying, are you ever going to cover such and such a song? And I'm thinking, well, actually, it's round number 30,321, and so well, no.
Yeah.
And so the Singer's Choice thing means that there's at least a possibility that I might, because the point is the singer guest chooses the 3 songs, which leaves it takes the sort of the burden of choice out of my hands,
It
and
does.
means we get to cover other songs. However,
Yeah.
I then asked you to pick three songs, and you
Yeah.
picked three that on the main podcast I'll probably cover next year.
Yeah.
And so I had to sort of sheepishly ask you to pick three others, and when you were very not kind of you to agree to.
But there's another part of it there, isn't there? Which I do. Again, I really appreciate what you're doing, because the thing that you ask for is not just any song. Again, you're narrowing it down for us because you ask us to choose a song that we've got history with, which is also delightful, for those of us, well, anyone, for those of us who've been singing these for maybe a few years. It's lovely that you go, look, can it be a song that you've arranged, that you've recorded, and also the idea that we get to sing it unaccompanied is really nice, because that might not be what most of us or some of us do. So that was very helpful, and that I would never have landed on these songs had you not given me those parameters. But I can see how it gives you much more to talk about. So that's great.
Indeed, yes, I like the idea. Well, I say it was my idea, but I do like the idea of having the guests sing each song unaccompanied. That was a thing. Although a couple of people have taken a bit more persuading than others, because I mean, Martin Carthy, for example, he was mildly reticent to do it without his guitar, but no, he was very a good sport and up for it in the end, so it was fine. But
Brilliant. What a valuable thing. What a gem to hear. But no, I really appreciate it, because it isn't something I do. It's something I teach, but it's not something I allow myself to do very often. It's not something I feel like I'm good at. So it's nice to revisit it's the pure drop, isn't it? The voice itself.
yeah, and it's for certain guests, who never do unaccompanied stuff, or certainly have never sung that song unaccompanied before. People, I was the first episode of the podcast when I had John Moulden on, and I don't think he'd ever sing his version of the Seven Bonnie Gypsies unaccompanied, but you
Right.
get a completely different sort of almost not quite perspective of the song, but you get a different look of the song from a audience perspective and from a performer perspective by doing it unaccompanied.
Absolutely.
And I think I think it's a rather neat thing.
I agree.
There you go. So how did you get into folk music? What was tell us about your sort of folk music upbringing?
Yeah, so I was born in London, and I right from the start, we are talking about a big slab of privilege when it comes to the music, because I had a mum who was really, really, really plugged into the folk revival, in London, particularly via the critics group, Ewan McColl and Peggy Seeger, and a lot of song in that part of the heritage. And then my dad was a traditional musician from the northeast of England. He was a Northumbrian piper, but also with a big song repertoire from the northeast, which is eventually where I moved to as a youngster. And I would say learn a lot, not all, but a lot of my music in the northeast of England. And now I teach at Newcastle University. I'm a lecturer and researcher there, so in folk and traditional music. So so a bit of a kind of full circle, and lucky enough to be able not just to have that access to repertoire and to singers, and to source recordings, which, bearing in mind this is pre-internet that we're talking, I was one of a lucky few who had a small but not insignificant library that my parents had amassed. We were ordinary people with some pretty extraordinary music books that I could go and look at. So not only did I have that on the doorstep, I didn't have to travel to see, the big centers of knowledge and holdings, although later on I did get very into the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library and visiting that. But it was really open to me. But of course, the other thing that was open to me was the possibility of performance. And I don't think it was that I was a particularly gifted young performer, but I enjoyed doing it. It felt like my language early on, and my parents did that too, so they were able to support me. So I did start singing and playing relatively early. So yeah, I'm well aware of how lucky that makes me. But it's yourself how much of a gift it is to feel faintly fluent in a language that speaks to you. And for me, that's what folk and traditional music and song always did. It was a really great way to make connections, and now my kids are doing the same, so that's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, yeah, I've had this as well, being of the younger persuasion, but that I guess you through your performances with Liza Carthy back in the day, and then James had you've had this for longer than I have. Probably the whole, oh my God, young people doing folk music. Oh, isn't it amazing? We should. It's getting mildly fed up with now. I mean, I'm 34 and I'm still doing gigs and MCs saying the tradition is safe in their
Oh,
hands. And well,
bless. It's not safe at all, Matthew. You could do anything. Anything could happen.
Yes, indeed.
I must admit, at 50-ish, I definitely don't have that anymore, but I do have the real delight of realizing how many generations upon generations of not just, what do you call it, like human generations, but musical generations, new kind of little blossomings of interpretation of the tradition, how many of those are layer upon layer underneath me, and keeping going. It's magic, really, especially if you have had the privilege of teaching, because then you've seen quite a lot of it up close. But oh yeah, I think it's very healthy. It's amazing how many young people you can have literally in the room doing it, and people will still say, oh, where are all the young people? It's like, it's fine. I think we're going to be, by the grace of God, I think we're going to be okay. So, but no, I agree. Back in the 80s, 90s, maybe even the early 2000s, I was still very much part of things that grew up at that point, things that were birthed, which are now taken for granted. For example, things like workshops, things like actually going to a workshop to learn from a traditional singer or player and actually getting that stuff broken down for you face to face. That really wasn't necessarily a big currency when I first started doing it, and then it became one of the main cultures and now flourishing. So yeah, really interesting to observe those bits of transmission and where we get things from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I emceed a gig. I was the MC at a gig at Whitby Folk Week last month or so ago, and one of the we had the house band for that night was a combination of Alistair Anderson and David and Jerry Oliver. So which I dubbed them the Northern Reprobates, and I did do the whole tradition is safe in their hands routine, which amused them greatly.
Karma, excellent, love it.
And just trying to get it out there.
Your bit.
Yes. Anyway, well, we are here at so far on the podcast. At the time of recording, we've got to Roud 12.
Yeah.
But here we are with your first song choice, which is Roud 3378. Marvelous.
I thought it was a competition. Sorry.
Who can come with the highest Roud number?
Yeah.
Well, I know for a fact that there's a couple of Sheffield carols that are now like 45,000 because I gave Steve Roud a copy of a book of them and he found 5 he hadn't done yet. So
top notch.
There you go. So we might get to them one day. But anyway, so the Wee Weaver then.
Yeah.
Roud 3378. Do you remember like your first encounter with this song?
No, I'm afraid I don't. And I mean, I think that is, one of the sort of lovely, in some ways, magical things about being truly immersed in song. I mean, I remember parts of the process of the transmission. I remember part of the process of learning it, but I don't ever remember hearing it for the first time. And that's true for a lot of songs that I learnt, I say learnt, a lot of songs that I absorbed or took from my family. But I know that Mum, Sandra, is the source of that song for me. And what I can remember are key points in the kind of consolidation, if you like, of how I was going to sing it and what I was falling in love with about it. So no, I don't remember the first moment, but I do, for example, remember that I was able to hear Bridget Tunney recorded singing that song probably very early in the piece because I had access to, is it the Song Carriers series?
That's right.
Of Ewan McCall. Now, so to me, looking back now, I'm assuming that was the site for the transmission, that Mum had learnt that from that recording, and that what Ewan is talking about with that with that rendition, is also where Mum came across it. I don't know that because Mum and I haven't chatted specifically about this for a really long time.
Well, I think that considering it's on, I think it's episode 9 of the out of the 10 Song Carriers episodes. I think that is kind of the source for everyone in a way. That's like the furthest you can, as John Moulden was saying, that's the sort of furthest we can take
I
it
would
back is
assume
that
so. I mean,
recording.
there's that series is a site for quite a lot of those. Bearing in mind, again, we're going to pre-internet. I was given a lot of really great access to recordings and books that I wouldn't have otherwise had because we didn't, but by mum's colleagues in the critics group, by, you know, older mentors and brilliant folkies that we, you know, that we both know well. You know, people were so generous. So I was able to, I had the Song Carriers, you know, I think I heard that on a tape or something. And I will say that we'll get to mum in a minute because obviously she's the voice that taught it to me. So it's come through that. But I mean,
Yeah.
hearing the Bridget Tunney and the Paddy Tunney renditions of it, you know, one thing I was really taken with, and I remember this about Queen Caroline Hughes as well, who was the source for mum's version of Barbara Allen. I think you fall in love with voices as much as songs sometimes. And what Bridget Tunney was doing with her voice, where her voice was placed, as in quite a sort of soprano sound, which is relatively rare when you're looking at higher, you know, you might say more kinds of female identified voices in traditional song. You know, it's quite rare to hear that very high reedy, or it was for me. I'd not heard that song or that sound before. And it really chimed with me as a young singer. I loved the sounds. They were unearthly, but really technical and beautiful and expressive. And yeah, something different. So I do remember hearing that. And I do remember falling in love with, and then being led to by mum, the modality of that song and the way that it has a modal or kind of double modal quality, but it also has moments where you can't tell whether it's expressing a major or a minor. To me, that is the absolute, do you know what I mean? Intangible magic of oral folk song. So that hooked me from the start. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Do you hear that too?
Yeah, absolutely. I sing a song, which I mentioned this on the main podcast in the Elfin Night episode, I think, when Brian Peters was on. There's the song that I sing, version of Bonnie Woodhall called Cold as Clear Stream. And the melody for that, I learned that from the singer Pete Shepherd. And yeah, the melody for that, if I have to talk about it as if it's in D major, otherwise my brain doesn't work.
Yeah.
If it's in D major, then the third of the scale, it goes in 2 octaves, and
Yeah.
if the F sharp, the third of the scale in its lower form,
Yeah.
is in the major, is the sharpened third.
Yeah.
But when you do the octave higher, it's a flattened third. It's the minor third.
Absolutely.
And you know, that's just, it sounds so natural, but if you pick it apart, you go, hang on, that's just really weird.
There's a lot going on. Absolutely. And it was the weird that hooked me in. You know, to me, the 2 Tunney versions are doing something which it's not even between parts. It's sometimes the note could be either. So it's almost a microtonal thing. But then on top of that, there are 2 sevenths. So there's a flattened seventh and there's a sharpened seventh within, you know, a kind of cascading up and a cascading down within the same line almost. And to me, it all fitted into this kind of thing of traditional song at that point was, yeah, it was really feeding something that I was questioning about what is music, and especially what is it beyond the marks on the paper or beyond the simple boundaries that we put, you know, around music. So that definitely hooked me, and I know that I've got a lot of that language from that's how mum was encouraged to I think, you know, interpret and sort of analyze oral folk song, and also I think it was not lost on me, and you mentioned this with John Moulden, but I think this is one of the first Irish pieces that you're looking at. Is that right? It was interesting to me that I'd picked an Irish song for this, and you know, I think I would tread a little carefully, but I think there's definitely some conversations that I'm interested in having, which is about being a sort of a type of Anglo-Irish musician where, yeah, the heft is definitely on the Anglo side, but without Irish music and scholarship as well, I wouldn't be the person I am. Do you know what I mean? So I think that, you know, and I wonder if you've probably got perspectives on that, because I know that your repertoire is, you know, is probably quite mixed, and our influences are often, you know, quite weighted towards a range of kind of Irish repertoires and singers, because they're just so good. It's so incredible.
They really are, yeah. I've learned, I've learned a handful of Irish songs over the years,
Yeah.
and one from Paddy Tunney,
There you go.
Captain Colson.
Right.
Paddy Tunney, which is pirates and feminism. So that's
Oh,
always
I wouldn't
great.
know anything about that. That doesn't
No,
sound.
of course, no. It says
Oh,
yes.
no. But no, I do. Do you know what I mean? I think there is, it's magical, and it's one of those things where I like to remind myself of the provenance of some of the songs that have been most influential to me and taught me how to sing.
Yeah.
Are Irish. And also, and then one more thing that really, I mean, I don't know if this answers the question about what I remember, but what I have carried through life with Wee Weaver as a little basket for it really is the idea of the song and the basic structure of the song, the of it, the core of it, but as a kind of carriage for ornamentation as well. So I actually now teach the Wee Weaver, but I teach it as a template for where might we ornament, what might we do with our voices that is between and around the notes. So it was definitely a bit of a, I mean, this sounds a bit more like a discipline than it actually was, but it was a little bit of a kind of test piece, if you like, for, what can I do with my voice and how would I ornament in a way that made this song, flourish and rise rather than overwhelmed it. So it's for a little, whatever it is, 3-verse thing, it carries quite a lot of my identity, really.
It packs a lot in.
Hmm.
I don't suppose, did you ever meet Paddy Tunney? So he died in 2002.
Not that I recall. No, I'm sure I would remember. No.
Okay, that answers that question. It was just an aside.
I wonder again. I mean, a lot of that sort of my connection with Irish song is very much through my time in London, and it's a bit hazy. So it may well be that Mum will have stories connected to that time. But
well, I've got this thing because I grew up going to the folk clubs in Sussex. I wasn't that interested in folk music until I was about sort of 13, 14, but nevertheless, I went along because it was live music and my parents were going to stuff. And so, although I have no memory of meeting some people, I'm pretty certain I've been in the same room as some of those key Sussex traditional singers who were still alive until the noughties.
I know that that's true of me as well. And because they wouldn't have been necessarily relevant at the time to me as a youngster, when I was falling asleep under a table. But it is nice to think that you were in the same room.
Yes, exactly. I breathed the same air as Gordon Hall.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I'm absolutely, I have a very, very dim memory of meeting. And I always get this the wrong way around because they were father and son, and I always get the wrong way around. I don't know if you can remember George and Ron Spicer, which one was the father and which one was the son.
Wow.
I can't remember which one was the son. I met the son, but he was like in his 80s or 70s.
Right.
I have very, very dim recollection of going to his farm.
Oh my
God. I
gosh.
was like 5.
Really? Really? Because I mean, George Spicer, I mean, there's some of my favorite versions of well-known English songs are them.
Yeah.
And the traditional singer, it's off-piste, but it is connected to Irish music, is the traditional musician or singer and musician that had the biggest kind of trajectory into my youth was Packie Byrne, actually. Again, really incredible source of brilliant songs. So it's interesting how I know you're a lot younger than me, but we do still span the lifetimes of some really incredible. It's not as binary from traditional to revival as I think it's sometimes presented, if that makes sense. It's more
you get these things.
together.
We always think of like source recordings, sort of the lifespan of source recordings ending in the sort of the early 1960s.
Yeah.
And then I've been researching some stuff for the podcast and I go, oh, a version of that was sung by an Irish guy in 1983.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, okay then, right, 80s.
Yeah, it's funny what we set up, isn't it? It's like, Trad's done. Now everyone, all you guys with guitars, it's your turn now. It's like, I don't think so.
Yeah. Martin Carthy, you're up.
You're up, exactly.
But like in Sussex, there are still, a small handful of the real deal.
Yeah.
What we would do as quote traditional singers. The Copper family are still there, obviously,
of course.
And we've got Bob Lewis still going. I think that might be it. I can't remember. But and then in Yorkshire, because we're in Sheffield, and in South Yorkshire, there's Roger Hinchliffe, son of Frank Hinchliffe, who's still singing his dad's songs.
That's right.
And then you've got people like Will Noble, who may not have learnt anything from his dad or parents, but he's aside from Roger Hinchcliffe, Will Noble's like the closest thing we've got to a traditional singer,
Yeah,
in a
absolutely.
way. You know,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's almost the real deal.
Definitely, yeah, and you know, England's like we have these pockets, don't we, of different types of experience, different types of transmission and legacy. And Northumberland is another one with its own absolute, you know, in some ways quite well, quite discreet, quite separate sort of way of thinking about it. It's brilliant, really, really
Absolutely.
a lot more colourful than I think people think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Okay, then back to the Wee Weaver. Um, so your version then, I think, as far as I can tell, that this version for you started with you and your mum Sandra singing it
Yeah.
on that duo album.
Exactly, neat and complete. So, and that would be another moment where I would say that was where I was consolidating how to sing that. Because I think as soon as you record something, you know, it's a truism, it stands to reason you're freezing it in history for a moment. It's a snapshot, but it makes something permanent that actually might be a lot more fluid. I don't sing that song anything like I recorded it with mum, but that was a consolidation of how we were going to do it. You know, things like
Yeah.
decisions about the mode, decisions about the timing. I will say something as well about I mean, you and I have already said, you know, there's not tons of what we would call versions or variants of this in terms of the lyrics. A lot of the fluidity between interpretations is actually living in how people interpret the music. But I will come to the lyrics in a minute because I actually I loved that sort of way that John Moulden talked about gaps in the oral tradition, you know, people inventing, or as he put it, people being dislocated from a very concrete location like Loch Erin Shore
Oh
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
original, right, original lyrics of this, or as we know it, the origin lyrics, to what Mum and I sing, which is Love Fair and Sure, which we absolutely consciously did. A, because we like the poetry of it, but B, because we absolutely agree with that idea that John talks about, which is, yeah, that those gaps in the oral tradition are a place where creativity can happen, a place where individual interpretation and running with the idea, you know, I think they're a real, I love the idea of thinking of that as a site for, you know, increasing the beauty, the reach, the accessibility, the meaning, even if it is, as some people might view it, wrong, you know, but I
Yeah,
actually am
yeah.
so here for scholars and historians who don't do the I'm sorry, you've actually got it wrong thing, but actually see that creative
Oh,
practice,
yeah.
you know, what I do, what we do, it is valid as long as we still say, look, yeah, I know, it should be Loch Erin Shore. Isn't that interesting that that song ends up sung by two Londoners who love Irish music, and we're singing Love Fair and Sure, but we're doing it with intent, I suppose. And actually, even if you don't do it with intent, I think John's point still stands. The oral tradition, the gaps between what we, you know, what we definitely know and what we make up, that's where a lot of our creativity and beauty and people's stories kind of live. So yeah, that, and I just do want to say that let's bring that right into the 21st century, because one thing that really delights me now about the Wee Weaver is that Maddie Morris, who is a incredible young singer, all around the traps now, doing some great gigs. But Maddie reworked that to be, of course, from Willie and Mary to Lily and Mary, which Maddie says they misheard, but actually it's just a fantastic little retake, a tiny little change that completely, you know, retakes the story and resets it and switches the kind of gender binary around into something different. And that's how that song is being heard by a bunch of people right now. So just I love that, you know, creativity, but staying true to the story and its origins.
Absolutely. It's brilliant. It is, after all, the evolving tradition,
Yeah, I would say
and
so. Yeah.
and that is it in process.
It
You know,
can't
it's
not
absolutely,
be, can it? It's just going to do
yeah.
it. It's going to have its own life.
I know people. You know, I've done gigs where people have come up to me and said, "You're singing that bit wrong. That's not how it goes. It's how it goes in my version because I'm the one singing it."
Yeah,
You know, I changed it because I didn't like that word, or I didn't want to sing that verse or
but
something. You
that's
know,
it. And I mean, I would never put rules or gatekeep any of that. But I mean, if there is something lovely about, again, doing that with intent and doing that with a reasoning behind it and doing it in a way that doesn't reduce the original. I think the only thing that I do have issues with is, and I've done it myself, I've got a version of George Collins that I know that I misread or misheard. And like, I like my tune, it's fine. But I eventually heard the original, and I'm really sorry, it might be Harry Cox, but I might be getting that wrong. But I heard the original, and it's like, oh my gosh, those little notes are actually reversed, and it's so much more alive. And if I just listen to mine, so there are parameters, but they're about taste and subjectivity, aren't they? They're about what we connect with, what we fall in love with. But as long as if the changes manage not to reduce it, I think that's really important, because this is complex, like we just said about modes. This is complex, rich, sometimes intangible art. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
but anyway, suffice to say, I really, really liked that historical scholarly take, which was still really, really gave space to the creative practice, which is a valid way of unpacking the music and its history.
Yeah, yeah. And it's nice to have a happy love song as well.
Well, exactly. I mean, I did used to introduce it saying that there's obviously just some missing and something horrible happens. Um,
It's like Sondheim writing Into the Woods, because the happily ever after it's to the intermission, and
exactly.
then it's what happens afterwards, or not if you watch the Disney film version, in
Well,
which
yeah,
they got rid of most of the what happens after the happily forever
yes.
after.
Yes, I'd rather not.
So the Wee Weaver is
Yeah.
Disney's adaptation of Into the Woods.
Well, who knows? And yeah, you could see it like that. I mean, we are so inured, aren't we, just to
Yeah, yeah.
tragedy being part of the thing. But I will say as well, I did, just in all seriousness, the acknowledgement of that, putting the song in a context, and John does it in an industrial context and social context. I think that's really important. I'm really drawn to that. It's like the song has a foot in a brook and a foot in a factory, and they're my favorite songs. That actually they are in a lot of ways rural love songs, but they are also snapshots of an industrial kind of evolution, where people defining themselves by their jobs, defining themselves by the hardship of their jobs. And that is woven, no pun intended, into the Wee Weaver. It's woven, of course, into things like the Four Loom Weaver. I'm a big fan of the song The Weaver and the Factory Maid in all its forms, which is an ancient English broadside. It's been used to tell a bunch of different types of love song, but the backdrop is always people and work. So to
Yeah.
me, again, the magic of the Wee Weaver has something to do with this working class identity narrative all the way through it, when you could be romanticized, you could be wooed by the blackbirds and thrushes. Do you know what I mean? So it does everything for me, because it does have that darkness and light.
So yeah, it's interesting when you come to songs like this that we know of as being quite short and having three, maybe four verses, three in this case, that you wonder whether it did stem from a longer text
Yeah,
originally.
yeah.
Like, but then, we've as a song that's going to be covered next week on the main podcast, The Demon Lover.
Hmm.
I'll have Brian Peters doing the history for that one again, with his extensive research that he does on those child ballads. And he's saying, this is a teaser for that episode, I suppose. He was saying that the original broadside that we have for it is, I can't remember how many verses it is, and it's got a really long title that starts with a warning to married women,
Yes.
and then proceeds to give you the whole plot in 3 lines as the title.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, where the song starts on that original broadsheet, that might not be the very original, but it's how far we can trace it back.
Yes.
And there's 21 verses before you get to anything resembling what we now know as the song "The Demon Lover." And so, over the years, it's, however that has happened over the years, it's been cut down
Absolutely.
and it gradually evolves and gets cut down again to
Yeah.
just the sort of the salient points to give you
Absolutely.
the broader scope of it. But nevertheless, if this is 3 verses, and as John was saying, there isn't much of a plot. It's a verse about weaving, and then 2 verses of how happy we are.
Yeah, and it zooms out of first person into third person, which I love. Another song that I love that does that is
Oh yeah, so it does. I'd not clocked that
it's
before.
that
Well
beautiful
done, me.
Disney Sheep Crook and Black Dog from mentioned Queen Caroline Hughes, which again is a song, a kind of rural working person song that then becomes in this case, a tragic love song in the middle. It's kind of bookended, really interesting. Now, can I just tell you one thing? I'll just do, this is related to the Wee Weaver in the long run.
Sure.
What you're saying about that idea of the whittling down and the kind of decimation of versions. So I'm just a quick shout out to my project, which is called Music Heritage Place. I'm currently looking at manuscripts from 1550 to 1850. Which are they're in county records offices. So outside where you might expect kind of through the lens of a single collector or even a single genre, we are, unpacking some of them not seen for a very long time. But yeah, manuscripts held around England. And one of the things that I've absolutely found that you're so right about are those, those original or at least earliest written versions of things. And one of the things I've noted as well, which I always forget, which is how many songs actually come out of the context of a show or a theatre show, or as you say, a much, much longer sprawling narrative. And then it gets whittled both by print and by the oral tradition. But it's really opened my mind and really changed how I feel about or how I understand the balance of oral versus print, or actually how they completely work in symbiosis. But it makes me think, and this really came to mind, I hadn't thought of it, but I have never seen the Wee Weaver written down, except when I've written it down for a student to learn just the lyrics. But I've never seen a written source. And I think at the point where I learned that song, I wasn't really interested. I was interested in how it was carried by the voices that I loved. If I learned that now, I would be down a research rabbit hole, really if I could, to try and find. It makes me feel like I haven't done my homework because, where are there more, or is that purely in a kind of oral transmitted kind of holding? Is it in the voices of the singers who've sung it? So yeah, it's just interesting how you change as a creative practice person. But at that point, I just wanted to soak up the sound of that song.
Yeah.
And now I think I probably spend a little bit more time with its context and its lyrics.
Yes, I wonder, did it, would it originally have had, if it could be traced back, and it might have been on a broadside or something that had, 45 other verses, would it have such a longer title instead of the Wee Weaver? Because I remember that this is another teaser for next week's main episode. Yeah. The full title for the demon lover that's in a 17th century broadside was, here we go, deep breath, a warning for married women, being an example of Mrs. Jane Reynolds, brackets, a West Country woman, born near Plymouth, who, having plighted her troth to a seaman, was afterwards married to a carpenter, and at last carried away by a spirit, the manner how shall be presently recited.
It's like early modern clickbait, basically. I am so there for it. I'm so happy. Brilliant.
It's like what the thing I detest now when you get this. I only watch this when it comes on, when it turns up about films, but people doing the rounds on press junkets and for promoting films, and you see the interview on YouTube or something, but they always present the interview preceded by a clip from the interview, as if I'm not already interested in watching it, but I might be now after watching a clip of it.
Yeah, watching the most scary clip. Yeah.
I've clicked on it already because I want to watch it. You don't have to tease it even more. I'm already here.
I've already bought the broadside. I've already yelled out Penny.
This is another tangent. This is the thing I hate about going to the cinema. I love going to the cinema, as I'm sure you know, but I'm sitting in, let's say, Cineworld, about to watch a film, and I get 4 adverts for Cineworld, and I think, I know, I'm already here. Anyway, and so as you said, I've already bought the broadside. I want to know what the song is. You don't have to give me the plot in title form.
Love it. Absolutely. I've always said that.
Yes, so maybe there, who knows? Maybe there was a title like that for the Wee Weaver with 45 other verses.
I'd love to know if anyone knows. I bet there's people there who know. This is just the fact that I don't know is because that wasn't what I was into investigating at the time. It was about what the thing felt like to sing. So yeah, are you doing that? Are you like right in? Comment.
Well, I've kind of been saying that, but not in those exact words. But yeah, I mean, if anyone, I'm kind of hoping that this podcast might spur the imagination of some people and kickstart another wave of song researchers.
I hope so. I hope the comments under your Patreon are just like links to the Bodleian and like little little woodcuts. That's what I want.
This is folk song nerds are us in a way. But it is very kind of it's not, as opposed to some songs, it's not particularly sort of matter of fact language, is it? It's very kind of reticent to use the word flowery, but it's quite flowery language.
Well done. Lovely stuff.
Thank you.
I agree. And without any real proper scholarship on this on Mike, because it's not my area really, but I mean, I'm a songwriter, but really, again, I wouldn't want to comment on Irish repertoires, but I think there is that incredible aesthetic of English language Irish song, and of course Irish language Irish song, with this incredible vocabulary, this glorious idyllic sometimes, and very, very expressive language. It absolutely is part of it. I mean, even the onomatopoeia, even the what's it called? Alliteration, of the title, and the way that the kind of, I think the closest thing I would call it is euphony, the euphonious kind of use of the way that the vowels sound and the way that the words feel when you're singing them. I know that might sound a bit weird, but it's really central to a lot of this, especially orally, music that is that flourishes in the oral idiom. It has to feel good and work in your mouth, really. It's got to, literally, what do they say? Roll off the tongue. Yes. And it does, and that doesn't mean that it's plain. You're right. It is quite florid, and
and it all rhymes.
And it does. Yeah, I have to concede that. My children are convinced that I cannot write a song that rhymes, and they're quite right. But this one does.
You're just carrying on Ewan MacColl's thing, aren't you? The Dirty Old Town.
Right, yes, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the classic example of
a
song that doesn't rhyme at all.
Doesn't need to. The music rhymes or something. Yeah.
Although I've noticed that certainly in pop song, it's pop song and not pop song, but popular song writing, there's that cliche of Moon and June, and the idea that's like the most basic, kind of crooner song thing. And at least in this one, it's Loom and June.
It is, exactly. Yeah, but it's also wee weaver confined to my loom, my love. So it does loom and love very closely. So you've got those two L's. Love, she's fair as a red rose in June. Love by some young men. So you've got love and young as well. So you've got a lot of internal, and they cross over. So already, like not to get too granular, and maybe this doesn't connect to some listeners, but to me, in the singing of it, you've got anything that kind of colours in and complicates the, let's be honest, very simple meter and very simple, monodic or modal single line. I really hate it when people call folk music simple, but I know that it is at some one layer of it absolutely is. But you know what I mean? Those bits of poetry actually cross over the simple lines into something much more complex, and these are all great templates for writing songs, which Ewan MacColl and others, full well know. But it's actually, the more you get into it, it's a bit of a virtuosic little bit of poetry again, outside what it means. Just how it sounds and how it works is delightful.
And even the repetition as well. I mean, this is something I'll actually be coming to next week's Demon Lover episode on the main podcast, is that repetition in that, with things like it's in Demon Lover, isn't it? What hills, and all that kind of repetition. And in here you've got as Willie and Mary roved by yon shady bower, where Willie and Mary spent many a happy hour.
That's right, yeah.
And in the conversation as well, in the other verse, it's I noticed that you changed it, which is this is this is the least kind of important sort of change, or at least I'm going by the transcription of your singing on Main in Norfolk and comparing it to the Paddy Tunney one.
Yeah.
In the last verse, what you and Sandra sang was, As Willie and Mary rode by yon riverside, said Willie to Mary, will you be my bride? And Paddy Tunney had that second line was the same, said Willie to Mary, will you be my bride? But he sang it with the names of the way around. As Mary and Willie roamed by yonder loft side, said Willie to Mary. So it's repeating it, but it offsets it. So yeah, Mary, Willie, Willie, Mary.
Love it. It's like an incantation. I don't want to get too...
Whether this has any relevance or bearing on anything whatsoever.
No, but I think, James did an interview with Frankie Armstrong, who is just one of my absolute favourite ballads, of all time. And Frankie has that great thing of, particularly talking about the big ballads, as we would call them, the big supernatural child ballads, whatever they are. But I think it goes for these fragmented or smaller pieces as well. But Frankie's got this brilliant thing of the songs just aren't about magic, they are magic. And I know that sounds a little bit, spooky month or whatever, but actually that incantational, repetitive, it is basically a bit like a spell. The spell might not, do actual magic. What it does is teach you it or make it take root in your brain, like a little, that's where the earworm comes from. It's not accidental, or at least it's not inconsequential that those things happen, that people who, let's be honest, when the lights go out, you've really got to make your own entertainment, or your life's really rough, or whatever it is, you've got to get those glimmers of what you can get from music.
No, it has to be enchanting.
Literally.
There you go. See what we did there. And the only thing other thing I noticed in the difference between Paddy Tunney singing it and you guys was, obviously you felt there weren't enough birds in it, because he had where the thrush and the blackbird they do sing, and blackbirds and thrushes. So obviously you felt there needs to be more birds.
But how iconic is blackbirds and thrushes as a motif, especially in Irish song? I mean, if young girls could sing like blackbirds and thrushes, is my version of, not mine, but the version that I learned of Hares on the Mountain, which was from Cavern, is blackbirds and thrushes, is right there.
And some versions of Ball of Yarn have Come All Young Maidens, something, can't remember the second line, where the blackbirds and the thrushes go warbling through the bushes.
There you
go. Which I misheard as wobbling once, which I thought was very good. And I did sing it like that, because I swear the singer said blackbirds and thrushes go wobbling through the bushes. I thought, what a great image that conjures up. But everyone else thought it was funny in the wrong way. I
yes,
thought it was
absolutely.
Funny.
We all do it.
But yeah, so the blackbirds and thrushes, but Paddy Tunney sang blackbird and thrush.
And thrush, I like
thrush.
That.
So it was singular. So only it was just a duet.
Yeah,
it was a duet rather than a choir.
Yeah, yes.
So so it's maybe a lower budget or something for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but otherwise, yeah, it's very interesting whether those differences are, mishearings or deliberate or anything. It's the sort of thing we could ponder on for hours.
But this is why it's interesting to reach out and see, like, does anyone know, and are there, because there is such a lot of great research now, and there are trails, and just yesterday, not connected to this song, but with my project, I found a little connection between a really historical source and, as you've said just before, a 20th century or 21st century singer and a version. And I think there's a connection, and there's geography and there's history all bound up in that. And, you can put these things together now. So it's lovely. It's lovely that I'm not myself age 12, just trying to, huddle around the 4 books that I've got and the tape, and try and go, what is this? Yeah. What is this music about?
And all your friends think you're weird for huddling around books.
They did then, yeah.
They did then, yeah. And actually springs to mind one of the other sort of possible explanations for the thrush and blackbird rather than the plural is that maybe he always did sing blackbirds and thrushes, but on that one time that he was recorded, he misspoke.
Yeah,
and did something else, but because that's the recording we've got.
Yeah,
that's the one we think that's like gospel.
Oh no, I've just realised that I've literally just demoed a song and I've sent it out to the band, and it's got a mistake like that on it. The last line is supposed to say, "See how it's caused my belly to swell," and I sang "smell" instead.
Oh dear!
And I've sent it out, and I've just realised when I'm dead, that's what they're going to find. And
That's on your gravestone.
yeah,
See,
I'm going to be the
my belly
smelly
to
belly
smell.
singer, the one with the smelly belly song.
Oh, you got to keep that. You got to keep that in the song and see if anyone notices when you do it live.
Yeah, exactly. Have to go and delete that. Be right back.
Well, audiences. I love audiences. They pay our living sometimes, but nevertheless, I love them because sometimes they just don't notice.
No,
Martin Carthy had that story about when he sang a song that had. I could get this right way around, otherwise this will be explicit on the podcast. Although this is Patreon, so it doesn't matter. But nevertheless, there's the line in a song he sang. This is back in the 70s, and he sang the line, "I saw a fat buck," but he accidentally spoonerized it, and no one noticed.
No.
It doesn't matter sometimes. Sometimes audiences, I love them, but they don't listen.
Thank goodness. It's over in a minute. And the thing is, when you're doing it, it lasts forever. Like time slows down and you go into bullet time.
And the rest of the song, you're going, "Oh no, I sang that." Yeah. It's very much slow motion, isn't it? It's
yeah.
It's suddenly become a Zack Snyder film.
Exactly.
Anyway, we've moved off quite significantly, but so in terms of, because there aren't that many, well, there's only real one source for this song, although two sources of the same version, and the sources are related. So there wasn't actually anything to recommend in terms of recordings of traditional versions apart from Paddy and his mother Bridget. So, but we've got slightly more. Again, this hasn't been that widely recorded on the revival circuits.
Yeah.
But we've managed to get 4 between us.
Yeah.
Of non-source recordings of revival in quotes singers singing it. So, who have you got?
So we've talked about Maddie Morris. Would really recommend Maddie's version of it. People will love it.
Maddie Morris, that's on the album Skin, isn't it? And the CD copy of that, literally, I say literally as if it could come into my letterbox any other way. It literally came through my door this morning, the copy of Maddie's album. So I can't wait to hear that.
Brilliant. Meant to be. Absolutely fantastic artist. Can I talk about one that I actually probably should have talked about already? Because I might be wrong about this, but I imagine that the branch that this version came down is kind of parallel to the branch, or in fact connected to Mum's branch, because Mum and John Faulkner are in the critics group together. Ewan and Peggy very much mentored them both as singers, as traditional singers. I assume, Mum can absolutely tell me I'm wrong, but I'm going to assume that they both learnt this song at the same time. But anyway, even if not, John Faulkner and Dolores Keane recorded The Wee Weaver. It's an absolutely stunning version, and I should have mentioned it right from the start, simply because Dolores Keane is a huge influence on my voice. You might not hear it. I'm not anywhere near the singer that she is, but again, talking about those voices you fall in love with, and that you try to emulate, or that you use as a template for technique, but also just spirit and immersion. Dolores Keane is a huge heroine of mine, and I know lots of other of my contemporaries. So her version of Wee Weaver with John it's really interesting, because they play with the parlando aspects of it, the fact that it kind of slows down and speeds up and has gaps in it. It's very irregular in a gorgeous way. And the ornamentation again is just, they hang this perfect vocal ornamentation, which is one of Dolores's calling cards. They hang it beautifully off this modal tune, but they also harmonize it in these spooky parallels. It really scratches my keep folk weird itch. Do you know what I mean? It's true to the original, but it's spookily arranged. So I think they came out in the 80s, didn't we? See,
1983, I think we found out.
Yeah.
That's our slogan: make folk weird again.
Yeah. Yes.
That's I think we should get hats done with that. We get some green hats or something like that.
Oh dear. But no, hugely beautiful version, and it was something that myself and James had in common when we met from 10,000 miles apart, him in Australia, me here. But we had listened to Dolores's music, and in fact we're doing a gig with John Faulkner very soon. So so he's still going strong. So
of course that's all the bagpuss stuff, isn't it?
But yeah, exactly. So I'm assuming that Ewan and Peggy may well be the site of something there, but again, they may have maybe they knew the Bridget Tunney.
Well, it was Ewan, wasn't it, that did that Song Carriers radio
That's
series,
right.
and that's
Yes.
Bridget Tunney's recording is on that. So
Yeah, which is available, which is really good to know. John mentioned that you can
yeah,
source that quite quickly and find ways to listen in and download if you want to, because they're really valuable, you know.
yeah, absolutely. I listened to the first episode the other day
Right.
myself. It was
Yeah,
yeah,
it's really
very interesting.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
just to have that take, you know, that again, if we're going to talk about the revival, it's not the only take. The revival is lots of different things, isn't it? Lots of different
mm,
ways of working with it. Lovely kind of colourful set of opinions. But I think the more that we can listen to, not just of the music, but of the way that people were contextualizing it for themselves as young singers at the time, you know, it's so fascinating.
absolutely. Great, yeah. And the other two versions that I know of that are really good are well, not that there are versions that aren't very good, but I'm saying these versions are great. Is yeah, Sam Sweeney and Hannah James did it on
Right,
their album Catches and Glees. It's interesting because it's both them playing as well, Sam on the fiddle and Hannah on the piano accordion. And that's really good. It's very much I think sort of free time. I think
right.
I haven't heard it in a long time, but I think it's free time. But then with them both sort of doing longer, sort of drony-ish things, but when they do instrumental breaks, it gets more of a pace and a bit of a rhythm to it,
Well,
which
that
is
isn't that a really distinctive point? We haven't even talked about the rhythm of the song, but that's a really good point. It works really well free, and it works
yeah,
really well with its implicit sort of 3/4, which of course the source singers are doing that already. There's, like I say, that combination of parlando and then this pulse of kind of three, this almost waltz time, but not quite. So I love that it's got several kind of personalities rhythm wise. So it's love, and
yeah.
that is a godsend to arrangers, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So, can I mention another? I don't know if you've got them there, but this actually links to your podcast in other ways. But I know that Kate Burke and Ruth Hazelton, who are a fantastic
Oh, yeah.
Australian singing and playing duo, who I've known since my 20s when I first started going to Australia. And I actually saw Ruth Hazelton at Walthamstow Folk Club just a few days ago. She was over visiting the UK, and they're incredible musicians and a lovely kind of portfolio of Anglo-Irish, Anglo-Australian, Irish-Australian diaspora, and other kinds of singing and writing. But the way that it links is not to plot spoil, but another song that I've chosen, which actually is an Australian version, which we're going to be looking at down the line. They are one of my sources for it. The source originally is Sally Sloan, but I
Yeah.
was shown it. I was kind of detoured to that version of the song by Ruth and Kate's beautiful version of Adieu, My Lovely Nancy. So yeah, just a little
Oh,
taster that just to bring the Anglo-Australian stuff in, which is
great.
where I'm at as well.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, lastly, I would just point out that, unsurprisingly, because they were around for such a long time and still are, Steel Ice Band did it as
Yes.
well
Yep.
on their album 10 Man Mop or Mr. Reservoir Butler Rides Again.
I'm surprised. I think they were just trying to do as many songs with the word Weaver in them as possible. And I think I appreciate that as a completist. I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
everything. If
Yeah.
it's got Weaver in it, then they will have it. I mean, absolutely iconic versions as well of
Yeah. I
things
mean, you
that they
can't
have
go wrong
done.
with Maddie Pryor, really.
Can't go wrong. You
It's,
cannot go wrong. Talk about vocal heroes. Absolutely.
yeah.
So
And
much.
interestingly, I think that, because of, we know Steel Eye as being sort of the folk rock and that sort of stuff with sort of the heavier stuff like Skewbald or
Yeah.
and their Blackjack Davy, the Ragtail Gypsies version, and then the jauntier stuff like All Around My Hat is the key example. But then Wee Weaver, I haven't heard it for quite a long time, but I think it's just Maddie accompanied by a fiddle.
Right.
So
Lovely.
it's one of the more trady
Yeah,
ends of
sure.
Steel Eye Span.
Sure.
Whether who knows whether that was deliberate, like let's move away from the folk rock for that
Uh-huh.
song, or
Yeah.
whether it was that's what this song needs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. May well be, because you do, I mean, people think the modes are even just there because they give such color to a single line, don't they? You get emotional range. Before people started doing symphonies and harmony to get emotion, it was literally up to the singer alone or the player alone. So it does give itself to that. And Steeleye, I mean, stands to it doesn't need saying, but I mentioned the Weaver and the Factory Maid, and they do a brilliant kind of bookend of the Weaver's song and then Weaver and the Factory Maid, and it's just incredible. I mean, just so thoughtful the way that it does go, as you say, how they can use something really, really sparse and then hit you with the full whack. So
Full
yeah,
band, yeah.
really brilliant.
Great stuff. So yeah, that's 5 versions. I think that's
There we go.
not that's all we've got time for. That's all there is as far as we're aware.
Yeah, and I mean it is worth looking at how you, as you keep saying, they're the same thing. It's the same raw materials. It's not like it's the same idea. We're not going to, one of those isn't going to end up with another Roud number. We're squarely in 3,000 and whatever it is, isn't it? And the variety within them, the variation of interpretation is, it's where it's at, isn't it? That's the creativity.
Absolutely, and it's not like, with some songs, everyone's got their own source for it in a way. It's I got it from that book and that set of broadsides. I got it from this set of broadsides, from the singing of that traditional singer, from this tradition of this singing of that traditional singer. With the Wee Weaver, it's Bridget Tunney. That's it. That is the source. I mean, Maddie Morris got it from you, but nevertheless, the line is there, and every single line of every single mode of transport, as it were, all goes back to Bridget Tunney to the, I don't know, Clapham Junction. I can't think what the mode of the underground line would be.
I don't know.
Mecca, London Victoria, let's say, is Bridget Tunney, where it all comes out of London Victoria, or is it? It's King's Cross. Sorry, I'm taking this too far, but it's going to be King's Cross rather than.
No, it is delightful.
You can trace the lines all back to her, rather than we don't know where the origin is, and everyone got it from somewhere else. It's all Bridget Tunney. That's all there is.
Yeah, there's not going to be a lot of that. That feels quite rare to me. It feels quite rarefied.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm glad you picked it for this, and I'm glad we covered it because that's really fascinating. So I think we'll draw it to a close there. Thanks so much for that, and we'll see you twice more in this Singer's Choice mini season.
Marvelous.
For 2 episodes. So and the next 2 are going to be equally as fascinating for different reasons.
Yay.
I think so. For the time being, though, we'll stop it there. Nancy Kerr, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am a wee weaver, confined to my loom. My love, she is fair as the red rose in June. She is loved by all young men, and that does grieve me. My heart's in the bosom of lovely Mary. As Willie and Mary rove by yon shady bower, where Willie and Mary spent many a happy hour, the blackbirds and thrushes sang in chorus encore the praises of Mary and love fair and sure. As Willie and Mary rove by yon riverside, said Willie to Mary, will you be my bride? This couple got married, and they rove no more. They have pleasure on pleasure, and love fair and sure. I am a wee weaver, confined to my loom. My love, she is fair as the red rose in June. She is loved by all young men, and that does grieve me. My heart's in the bosom of lovely Mary.
That was Nancy Kerr singing The Wee Weaver, which brings this episode to a close. What an excellent little song. What did you think? What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to drop me an email at intheroud@singyonder.co.uk, or comment under this post on the Patreon. And you can always visit the podcast on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Just search for In The Roud, a folk song podcast. One last huge thanks to this week's guests, John Moulden and Nancy Kerr. Join us again in 2 weeks' time for the next instalment in this Singer's Choice mini-season. We will be looking at Roud 3065, which is the Northumbrian song Elsie Marley. Alongside Nancy again as our regular singer guest, my historical guest will be Vic Gammon. Until then, that's it from me. Stay safe, be well, and I'll see you next time in The Roud on Patreon.